Welcome to the Berkshires Gone By, history and folklore about the westernmost and most beautiful county in Massachusetts. I'm your host, Brooke. What did famous authors do when they wanted to brainstorm together? They went for a hike and got stuck in a rainstorm. I'm sure getting stuck out in the rain was unintentional, and finding a shallow cave to hide in was lucky. But the brainstorming was outstanding. For the writers involved were Herman Melville and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Along with a small group of intrepid adventurers, they, on the 5th of August, 1850, took a hike up to the top of Monument Mountain in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, when a thunderstorm swept in. They really didn't know each other well yet, but this predicament indeed made them friends. The group also included Oliver Wendell Holmes, who apparently scared a few of his companions by getting rather close to the cliff sides. Trapped in their little cave as they were, Melville and Hawthorne were left with nothing to do but chat. And what better to talk about than book ideas? You know, like Moby Dick, which they apparently went over, as Melville was wondering how to construct certain elements of the story. Hawthorne later wrote a little blurb about the day's events in his journal. This hike has been reenacted since 1977, though thunderstorms are not guaranteed. At 1,642 feet tall, Monument Mountain has been a destination since before there was tourism. In modern day, the land around it has been set aside, so that the mountain now stands on a 503-acre reservation along Route 7 in the town of Great Barrington. The summit is called Squaw Peak, and it's for the most part treeless. Thus it boasts stunning views of the surrounding Berkshire Mountains, as well as those in Connecticut and New York State. A second impressive feature of the mountain is the column-like Devil's Pulpit, which towers alongside a cliff as if defying gravity. Cliffs cut an abrupt edge along much of the eastern side of the range. Other impressive features include large sloping boulder fields that create caves and dramatic natural rock formations. There's another sort of story about a pile of stones, which apparently once stood either on or at the base of the mountain. This pile, though, having been man-made. It's even drawn on early maps and written about. But no one now quite knows where it was. William Cullen Bryant wrote a poem entitled Monument Mountain, the story of a bright-eyed, raven-haired native maiden who falls in love with a young man she is forbidden to be with. Her broken heart causes her to wear thin with grief, whispers among the other young women as they speculate about her woes torment her. Despite her attempts to put him from her mind, she is unable, and eventually climbs to the summit, from which she throws herself. This poem found great acclaim with readers, delighted at the mountain's description, mingled with the tragic story of romantic love. Bryant describes this mound as cone-shaped, and as the final resting place of this beautiful maiden. The story includes the idea that passing members of her tribe would pause a moment to add a stone to the pile, as a sign of respect, thus increasing the size of this monument. Another story says that the monument was to a great chief buried beneath it. It's said that Chief Yoakum himself described these piles of stones not as graves, but rather as cairns, as markers, used to mark the boundaries between territories. One apparent measurement set this pile of stones at 6 or 8 feet in diameter, but others, including early surveyors, said that it was much bigger. Charles J. Tyler claims in the book History of Great Barrington, written in 1882, that the monument was instead a marker in memory of a great and horrible ambush when one tribe sprang a trap at the bottom of the mountain and attacked another, resulting in many deaths. He also claimed that the monument was dismantled by thieves in about 1842, that the stones so respectfully piled were tossed aside in hopes of uncovering some hidden native riches. It's not said if anything was found underneath, only that the pile was left as little more than a circular pad of stones. But it does give some excuse as to why the monument seems to be missing today. This native monument that gave Monument Mountain its name may also have been simply dismantled to make way for the road between Stockbridge and Great Barrington, as it grew from a simple path into an actual carriageway. Others say it was taken apart to be used as building materials in the construction of nearby homesteads. The problem with this monument that apparently stood beneath Monument Mountain is that it may not have ever really existed at all. That would mean that not only is Squaw Peak named after a fictional maiden from a poem, but that Monument Mountain itself could have been named after a fictional Native American mound. Not to say that these mounds don't exist, they do, and there are some not that far away, in Connecticut and New York State, although this one's authenticity is in question. Charles J. Taylor, author of the History of Great Barrington, may not have been the best at research. Most of his book seems to be accurate, but there are some mistakes. At the time, though, what could you really do? You read other older books, and you would ask the locals. If the locals were wrong, then your book might end up with errors. The problem seems to have started a few years before, when the locals read a letter published in the Berkshire Courier in 1866 that describes a bit of South County history, but is wrong and outright plagiarism. Both the source of the letter nor its writer are divulged. Certainly a red flag from the get-go. But what seems most unsettling is the fact that it tried to present a speech on faith given by a man known to settlers as Ebenezer as the words of Chief Concopat. These speeches, when compared, are identical. Thus the letter is terribly suspicious. Unfortunately, this also means that what it says about the stone pile monument beneath the mountain might also be fraud. Yet the story is steadfast. And there are a few reliable accounts of someone seeing the pile in person. David Ingersoll, his family's been featured in our episode about Laura Secord, mentioned seeing it. A Reverend Hawley called it the largest he'd ever seen. And Reverend John Sargent mentioned it in his journal in 1734, and that's in addition to some surveyors from much earlier who claimed to have seen it and used it in their surveying. Just inside the front cover of my copy of the book, A Hinterland Settlement, by Eloise S. Myers, which is a book about the history of the town of Tyringham, Massachusetts, there is pasted a map. It's a map of early South County. To those who may not be from this area, the northern and southern halves of the long and narrow Berkshire County are often referred to as North County and South County, the line being drawn between the towns of Pittsfield to the north and Lenox to the south. Anyway, this map is hand-drawn, and at almost center is dabbed with a bit of red ink, is placed a small spot, which is labeled Mound. This is at just about the assumed location of the native mound monument. Across the bottom of this map is written, "This Indian map, made by Robert H. Beckwith." From a very early map, filled with points of interest, from his extensive study of early Berkshire. Township No. 1 was first known as Brewer's Mills, the Indian cairn at the southeast base of White Mountain, or Nawahisi, Indian name for monument, marks the location of the Indian Pass on the New England Path, or Great Indian Fur Trail. The truncated pyramid or mound is centrally located. And, just as that note states, Monument Mountain is labeled White Mountain, and there just south of it is the Indian Mound. But hand-drawn from memory maps tend to be a little off. Could it be that it just wasn't where everyone believes it was? Or is? Could it still be there? Perhaps in the woods, up behind someone's property. The map would put it vaguely in the land mass that runs between East Mountain and Monument Mountain, but between Mountain Valley Road to the east and Route 41 to the west. The map also shows it not far from both Fort Dewey and Fort Burghardt. David Ingersoll's account seems to agree with this map, as he says the stone heap was on the east side of the Housatonic River, at the southern end of Monument Mountain. Maybe someone knows where it is, and just doesn't know what it is. Or maybe it really was picked apart for its stones, or dismantled by thieves. Real or not, misremembered or not, misplaced or not, the story of the Indian cairn is deeply interwoven with the story of Monument Mountain and the history of Monument Mountain, because even though fiction is fiction, old stories are still history. It has at this point become part of Great Barrington folklore, of Berkshire folklore, and has added to the fascinating and rich tapestry of our county story. If you want to search for this Native American stone heap by yourself, take a hike around Monument Mountain. Take a hike in the footsteps of Herman Melville and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Read the poem by William Cullen Bryant, entitled Monument Mountain. Perhaps read it at the summit, upon Squaw Peak. But remember to take a camera. You'll want to be able to bring those views home. This has been The Berkshires Gone By, created, written, directed, and read by myself, Brooke Grenier, and co-produced by Deanna Garner. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where every day new pictures of Berkshire history are posted. You can also find episodes on Twitter, Facebook, and at our website, www.theberkshiresgoneby.com. At our website, you can see pictures related to every episode, as well as every episode ever made. If you'd like to email us, that address is theberkshiresgoneby@gmail.com. Submissions for new ideas are always welcome. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. Thanks for listening.